the sky. Okay.
The sky.
I'm taking that cerulean blue. You can use a palette knife or you can use your brush to mix. I'd say when you first start up, people are, might be a little intimidated. So just take your a palette knife if you have one. If you don't, you can just take your brush, and I just use my brush, and then I go right on, and I am going to start adding to the sky.
Okay, just straight cerulean blue.
Add some. What you can do is eventually you're going to want 3 shades. So I take the cerulean blue, and I'm going to have like straight on. Then I'm going to have some that I'm going to mix with some white,
Okay.
and you're going to get that lighter color. I'm going to get me an angled brush. So brushes is another thing that there are, different types of brushes. There are angle brushes, which would be one of these, if you can see it. Then you got angle brushes, different sizes. This is a number 6. You can get a size 10, 12.
Oh, I got a 6.
You got a 6?
Yep.
Obviously, the larger, the more bristles that you'll have. And depending on how large your surface is of the canvas. Depends on that as well. So Lori, okay, you're going straight blue. So if you want to hold off for a second, when I look at this, okay, I see right behind the lighthouse is that beautiful straight blue. But above that, it's clouds.
Mm-hmm.
But there are all kinds of different colors in those clouds. I mean, you cannot go wrong when you do clouds. It doesn't have to be perfect like this. You can add all kinds of beautiful colors. It's like water. It's a lot of strokes of different colors. Remember that the clouds here at the top of the painting are going to be your largest ones, or there's going to be more definition there. In the background where the tree line is, that's going to be a lot softer, a lot smaller, a lot different than the clouds in the front. I'm going to show you my canvas. I don't know if you can see it, but what I'm doing is using that yellow ochre that's on the back of my canvas, and I see streaks in there. I see some lights and some darks. So instead of, there, perfect. So right here, perfect, Dave. So I'm going to go, and I'm just going to start at the top, and I'm just going to go a little darker. But you don't have to cover all of that yellow ochre. Some of that can come through, okay? And be part of your clouds, or add light to that later. So all I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm going to do a nice dark corner here. Again, I'm just going real quick. I'm not trying to define anything. I'm just trying to get my clouds in there. I noticed that behind the lighthouse, if you look at the picture, there's a dark cloud there. So if you want to add that, but don't worry about that yellow. You can leave that yellow there. Just use the empty space. And again, it's like what we were doing before. It's just kind of like get your clouds in there. And it should appear like there are clouds without even having to put clouds in there. I mean, you're just finding your darks, your lights.
Oh, okay.
We will go through eventually and add, some pinks so there's a dark cloud here. It's like a stormy cloud. I went real dark with it. I don't care. We can cover it up. I never freak out too much. That is a little bit brighter blue that I would want. So this is where the fun part comes, Laura. This is where you start experimenting. And if you don't have a color chart, which I did, have one, I don't use it anymore. I just, on my own, will be like, that's too blue. What do I do? Well, if you add a little yellow to it or a little bit of red to it, it'll make it more of a gray color.
Okay, so mix it into the paint or just on top?
Yeah, so I don't know if you can, I'm just taking that blue and adding a little bit of maybe white
So are you mixing it
down a
into
little
the
bit.
paint on the palette, or are you mixing it into the paint on the
I'm
canvas?
doing it right on my palette. So, like down here, I've
Okay.
taken the cerulean blue. This is a pretty clean palette. Some people will have palettes that they've used for years and years, and the paint is like inches thick. So I went straight cerulean, and then I added some white to it. Okay. And
I'm
this is why people will say, you know, a lot of people are like, how do you do clouds? And the only way I can explain it is I love to use the underpainting as a guide. And then as you figure out, I do my darks first, and then I put the medium tones and the lights on afterward. That's just the way that I do it. So, like, if you look at this painting, if you look at the picture in front of you, Lori, like where the skyline, where the sky meets the trees, it's kind of like a sweet spot. That's where, there's some brightness there. So I'm just going to do like a little horizon of clouds that are just going to meet right up against where the trees are. And you can use white with a little yellow ochre, and you get that really creamy color. And this is what I was saying. You start to like experiment with paint and color. I did take a color workshop, and I found it very helpful because at first I was like, I wasn't sure what colors to mix together. But then I found out that I just like to do it on my own. My painting over here, you'll see that the skyline at the very bottom is very soft and very, the sun's going down there or coming up. So that might be brighter over there and now I'm incorporating that paint. I'm bringing it up to where that darkness was, and I'm kind of just adding it to it. So I'm going to have 3 tones, and all I'm doing right now is kind of like scraping into the canvas. Now, if you want to make more of a lavender, you want to go on the pink side, I love having all of that, the contrast, the different colors. So what you would do is you might take a little bit of red, if you have a little red in there, and you mix it with some white, and it only takes a little bit with a little bit of red, which just gives it like a little bit of a pink tone. And I'm going to add that on top wherever I had darks. On top of that, I'm just going to add that color and I'm going to start filling in where the yellow ochre is, our underpainting. And all that's going to do is if that yellow ochre shows through, that's absolutely fine. I think that's what helps to give paintings a lot of depth. Lori, can you show me a close-up of your painting, the sky?
It's not so great.
No, you're fine. No, it's actually pretty good. That's why I say not to. What happens is that our paintings can get really, really muddy, okay? Because
Yeah.
we add, once you start adding all these colors together, it's easy to make black and brown. You just keep adding, reds and blues and greens, and you add them all together, and it gets muddy, which is fine for when we do the trees. The sky, I hold my brush loosely. I try not to do too much detail. I'm adding layers. And remember how I said I like the 3s for that reason. I just like, there'll be some dark blues, there'll be some lighter blues, and I'm going through and I'm adding a little bit of that white on top. Neutralized is a word that you really, really want to keep in your mind because the more you neutralize a color, the further back it'll appear. So these clouds in the front, like at the very top of your painting, you want those to be a little bit more in your face, okay? Because those are actually right above your head if you're standing there. So, you want to make those larger.
Explain neutralize a little bit to
Well,
me.
neutralize is when it's like when it's not a pure color. So what you're doing is, let's say you dirty up the color. Okay, so instead of it being like a straight blue or whatever, it's dirty, and that's what's happening with my clouds here. Like I am adding a little bit of red to my blue, I guess you could say, and it's just going to make the bottom part of the cloud seem like it's underneath because it gives it depth because it's neutralized. The stuff on the front, on the top, is more straight on color. Okay, so if I put color right here on top of that, I just lay it on there. I've seen people use big brushes and just like big strokes. And, I just like building it up. I like doing darks. And then I go with my medium colors. And then I go with my lights. And your light, don't think of white as brightening up your colors. You really want to stay more in the yellow, warm colors because white is opaque. And what happens is that it'll milk out your colors. It'll get that milky, because it's non-transparent. So it's just like, it's perfect for mixing colors, but you want to be careful. If you want it to look hotter or you want it to look brighter, you add a little yellow. The yellow will come out brighter because your yellow is a transparent color. Yeah, yellow is one of those where you can see through it, and the white you can't. And there's so many different paints out there. You can go and just get your basic oils, start with your primary colors. I say 9 to 10 different colors, learn how to mix. Yellow and blue make green, that kind of stuff. You can make yellow and red, make your own orange. And it gets you to think about how to blend and make the paints for yourself that you like, the hues that you like. I'm never afraid of using a dirty paintbrush. I mean, you can wipe paintbrushes on a napkin. You can use the mineral oil. To me, especially when I'm working on the underpainting, I think it adds a lot of depth. So if you lose some of that and everything starts to become the same color, go in with some darks and add some darks here and there. And that'll usually be under the clouds a lot of times. And then the top of the clouds are more, on the white end of it. But I didn't learn this overnight. I've been doing it for 14 years. I did have some classes at the beginning. It was an adult ed class. But I've never been trained. I did take, one workshop. I would just go home at night from work when I worked in the restaurant business. And I'm like, how do they do that? And I would just go home and I'd practice. And all I'm doing now is just adding on top of that blue, I'm just layering different colors, some white perhaps, and I'm leaving some of that underpainting showing through that yellow.
Yeah, mine's all color covered up, but yeah.
You covered it all up, right?
Yep.
But if you let that dry, we can go in and add some of those nice colors afterward, Laura.
Okay.
So if you look at me, right, I'm doing right now, if you look at my brush, I just put a lot of that, a little bit of red, a little bit of white, and a little bit of that blue. And all I'm doing is, this is an actual cloud. I'm going to add that to where that yellow is. And I am just going to add like a lighter color there. And remember, up top, make them, more obvious, more pronounced. And look, it's a cloud, man. It's like, just feel the cloud. Just be the cloud, I say. It's paint that you're putting on a canvas, and it's what appeals to you. And no two painters are going to be the same. And it's not about trying to copy other people or making it look just like the photo. But skies, fields, water, it's all about keeping it loose and allowing movements. And all I'm doing now is I'm going in the background of my sky And
Oh.
I'm just kind of like, I call it smushing in my paint and just kind of like blending it all in together. I'm going to leave some of those, a little bit of yellow underneath, and you're going to be able to see that coming through. And that's what gives you depth. It's important to have a focal point. So the focal point of this painting for me is going to be like right about here. So when people look at it, this is what they're looking at. Don't worry about what you see on the sides. That's going to be, your eye's not going to catch all that. And you don't want to go there. And that's why people say, well, what do they mean? That's why sometimes when you build, you put a flower, you put it in coming into the painting. But this is going to be the focal point right here. And this is our sweet spot. So when people look at this painting, they're going to look at that lighthouse. They're going to look at the red. They're going to look at this. They're going to maybe look at the sky, but it's all important to get these darks and these sunlights in there. The water, not so much. It's pretty much one color in here, but exactly what you said, you're not seeing through the water. So it can be like that. And that's going to make everything in the foreground, which is everything here in the foreground, the lighthouse is going to look three-dimensional because it's going to be in your face, okay? And we're not going to worry about little details with flowers and all that. That's just done by applying color, some reds right here eventually if we want red flowers. But you're not trying to paint individual little flowers. I just go and I put some reds in there and whatever, and then I'm going to put some highlight red on top of the red, remembering the three tones, the darks, the mediums, and the lights. And anything where the sun shines on is going to be brighter. And everything else that's hidden, the sun's not seeing that, especially on this side of the lighthouse. We're not seeing sun out here. You might see a little bit on the top of the trees, but this is going to be all dark. And it's so easy for people to say, like, the sky is blue, the trees are green, the water is blue. And it's so different than that. I remember it's a good thing when you're driving around, you're going down the interstate. I don't know if anybody causing any accidents, but look at the sky, look at the trees, and you won't even really see green unless it's June in Maine and the leaves just came out. There's a lot of darks. It's blues and very, very neutralized colors. And then you go and you put those brighter greens on the very tops or the very tips of a few trees just to appear like those are the leaves. And it'll read to your eye. You don't have to put in every little leaf, okay? So it's about the values and then going in afterwards and adding, some details. Paintings take a while, you can rush them. You can go through them real quick. I'm spending a lot of time on my sky, but I'm enjoying it because I have these colors out right now. So, I'm able to just, like here in the horizon, I'm just going to go and muddy that a little bit where it meets the trees. I don't want it too defined. So I'm just adding more light there. And it's a process of going back and forth.